France's President Emmanuel Macron has named Michel Barnier as his choice for prime minister. Some 2 months after Macron's decision to call snap elections resulted in a parliament without a clear majority. The 73-year-old Barnier is a conservative politician who's served in previous French governments and was tasked by the European Union with leading Brexit negotiations with London. The far-right National Rally Party, which holds the most seats in the lower house of Parliament, says it is undecided on whether or not to back Barnier. All right, I want to bring in now correspondent Cole Stangler. He joins me from Marseille in France tonight. Cole, good to see you again. You know, the story of the dysfunction, if you will, of French politics goes all the way back to this past June with the European elections. Then we have the snap elections in July. Give us a sense of how difficult the task of forming a new government is going to be for Monsieur Michel Barnier.
Well, it's going to be very difficult. It could take days. It could take weeks. The key kind of deadline they have in mind, or the sort of key issue they're thinking about is once Barnier is able to figure out a government that he thinks is going to appeal to the National Assembly, he's going to have to give a speech before Parliament. And at that point, the question will be, is whatever Barnier's work has done in the meantime, in these coming days, in these coming weeks, is that government going to be able to survive a motion of no confidence? That's kind of the big question here. Can his government survive the opposition of half of the National Assembly, so 289 MPs? That's the big question, and we're going to see this being answered, in part, at least over the coming days and weeks, by the kinds of choices he makes for ministers.
Do we know what is it that Barnier has or has said that makes Emmanuel Macron think that this is the right man for this job right now?
Well, I think there are, to simplify, two big reasons. One is Barnier is someone who's well regarded by the French business establishment, also by the European political establishment, the EU. France is in a particularly difficult economic situation right now. They have a very important budget that they have to get approved by the end of the year. And so Barnier is seen as someone who's trusted by the business community, someone who is sort of a trusted hand to continue Macron's economic policies and to make sure that budget gets the approval also of the European Union, because France overshot its deficit last year. So France is actually in the procedure for excessive deficit, according to the EU. So there's a lot of pressure to have a budget. I think that's one very important reason. The other one is that Macron has made the calculation that this is a prime minister that's going to be able to, like I said, withstand that motion of no confidence, and more particularly, someone who's going to be able to appeal to the far-right National Rally. Once Macron decided that he was not going to name a prime minister that was going to win the support of the left, de facto, that meant finding a prime minister that's going to be able to be at least tacitly supported, tolerated by the far right. And I think that's the other big calculation here. Barnier is someone who's quite conservative, ran for president with the right-wing Republican Party, talking about a moratorium on immigration. He's seen as someone who is at least palatable to the National Rally.
I want you to take a listen to something said by the French left-wing leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon after news of Macron's announcement concerning Barnier. Take a listen.
Our reaction is not focused on the qualities of this person, Michel Barnier. That is not the issue. The issue is that the president has just decided to officially deny the results of the elections that he himself called.
Cole, doesn't he have a point there? Emmanuel Macron called the vote 3 years early in the wake of his coalition's disastrous results in the European elections. I mean, right-wing parties, they don't have a majority, and yet a conservative is now the new prime minister. That doesn't seem very democratic, right?
Well, to be clear, we look at the French Constitution. Emmanuel Macron, as the president, does not have an obligation to, he can name whatever prime minister he wants under the French Constitution. He does have that constitutional prerogative. That's his. But what I think Mélenchon is getting at is, when you look at those elections that you referred to, the left-wing coalition, the New Popular Front, won a plurality of votes, pretty evenly split among three blocs, the Macronists, the left, and the far right. But the left had a plurality. And so in countries that have more prominent parliamentary systems, there are sometimes traditions in which you at least ask the party that has the most votes, the coalition with the most votes, to try to form a government. Maybe it doesn't work, but at least give them the opportunity. And Macron repeatedly refused to let the New Popular Front, that left-wing coalition, have a prime minister of their choosing. And so that's what Mélenchon's reacting to in part. And I think there's another bigger frustration that he's sort of tapping into, which is this idea of, at the polls, you had French voters, majority of French voters voting either for centrist parties or left-wing parties against the far-right National Rally in this revival of what's called the Republican Front in France. And what we have now is a prime minister that in many respects is designed to, again, at least win the tacit support, at least be tolerated by the far right. And for a lot of people, especially on the left, that makes them quite upset. And I think we're seeing that in that reaction from Mélenchon.
So where does this leave then the far-right National Rally Party? Will it be able to undermine and possibly depose Barnier?
Well, I think the first thing is if we're at this step right now, it means that they're at least willing to hear out Michel Barnier. That was not the case for other prime ministers' names who were floated by Macron. The far right, the National Rally said no way. They're at least willing to hear Barnier out, and that's what they've said. Jordan Bardella, the president of the National Rally, has said he wants to wait and hear that inaugural speech of Barnier once he has the government to decide whether or not they're going to support a motion of no confidence or not. So right now, they're at least open to the possibility. It's going to depend on his cabinet. It's going to depend on that speech he gives.
So what about Mr. Barnier's policies? I mean, the world, if the world is familiar with him, they know him as the Brexit negotiator. So beyond that, I mean, what changes will he try to make, or what policies will he pursue as prime minister? Do we know?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I think that number one priority, which I alluded to before, and that I think everyone's expecting him to deliver on, is that passage of a budget that is able to be supported by the French business community and also supported by the European political establishment. That's what Barnier's main priority is, I think, at the end of the day. Beyond that, it becomes a little bit more uncertain. He gave some very brief remarks today where he talked about the importance of schools, immigration, national security, jobs, but very, very vague, unclear. I think it's going to depend on, again, those choices that he makes for his cabinet ministers, and we'll know more when he gives that big speech before Parliament in the coming weeks.
Correspondent Cole Stangler reporting tonight from Marseille in France. Cole, as always, we appreciate your time and your reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.